Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. Check out H.A. Goodman's other channel after this live stream. I'm building that one up again. It's about 20,000 subs. Let's get it to 100,000 subs soon. We've been spot on, ladies and gentlemen, on everything. I've been telling you this for 10 years. This is James Comey's indictment here. It will be the template for Hillary Clinton's indictment. This is the placeholder indictment, only 2 pages, very broad, very vague, very, somewhat ambiguous. And this is a placeholder for superseding indictments, likely conspiracy statutes. They're not going to stop with convicting or prosecuting James Comey. Hillary Clinton, the Day of Atonement for wonderful, morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats is upon us. Hey, nobody's perfect. If I said or did anything, if I said anything in my life to offend anyone, I am sorry and I apologize to you, ladies and gentlemen, or to anyone watching. But you don't have to, every human being is fallible. Nobody is perfect. But there's a difference between being an imperfect human being and creating an entire Red Scare McCarthy-era hoax. This is the template for the indictment that's likely being written as we speak, almost certainly for Hillary Clinton. Why? Hit subscribe. You will hear John Durham's testimony in a second. This is the Durham Annex is going to be the basis. John Durham ended his campaign about 2 years ago. This falls within the statute of limitations. Hit subscribe. To my super chat, thank you so very much for your support. Your super chat is greatly appreciated. John Durham's evidence that he compiled, the Durham probe. John Durham deserves the Medal of Freedom for what he did. The Durham probe will serve as the basis for indictments of Hillary Clinton and others, Comey, Brennan, Clapper, and a whole bunch of other people. Because the Durham probe interviewed Hillary Clinton, interviewed John Brennan, and others 2 years ago. The probe did not end until 2022, 2023. Watch this, ladies and gentlemen, and you will find out exactly why the indictments not only are imminent, but they're likely being written as we speak. President Trump almost certainly, with almost 100% certainty, will indict Hillary Clinton because of what you're going to hear right now.
The summer of 2016, did our government receive intelligence that suggested Secretary Clinton had approved a plan to tie President Trump to Russia?
Yes.
Was that intelligence important enough for Director Brennan to go brief the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, the Attorney General of the United States, and the Director of the FBI?
Yes.
And was that intelligence put then into a memorandum, a referral memorandum?
Yes.
And was that memorandum then given to Director Comey and Agent Strzok?
That's who it was addressed to, yes.
Did Director Comey share that memorandum with the FISA court?
I'm sorry,
Did he share that memorandum with the FISA court? Did Director Comey do that?
I'm not aware of that if he did.
Did he share it with the lawyers preparing the FISA application?
Not to my knowledge.
Did he share it with the agents on the case, working the Crossfire Hurricane case?
No.
Didn't share it with the agents on the case. Can you tell the committee what happened when you took that referral memo and shared it with one of those agents, specifically Supervisory Special Agent Number 1?
We interviewed the first supervisor of the Crossfire investigation, the operational person. We showed him the intelligence information. He indicated he had never seen it before. He immediately became emotional, got up and left the room with his lawyer, spent some time in the hallway, came back.
He was ticked off, wasn't he?
Yes.
He was ticked off because this is something he should have had as an agent on the case. It's important information that the director of the FBI kept from the people doing the investigation.
The information was kept from him.
Who's Charles Dolan?
Charles Dolan is a public relations person here in Washington, D.C. He had prior involvement, professional involvement with Russian government, representing Russian government interests. He was a person that was associated with Igor Danchenko.
He was also buddies with the Clintons, wasn't he?
He had held positions when President Clinton was president.
In their campaign advisory to Secretary Clinton's presidential campaign, executive director of the Democrat Governors Association, that's the same Charles Dolan we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, and wasn't he also a key source for information in the document?
So the conspiracy statutes, they're not only going after, felonies like lying under oath. John Ratcliffe and others have stated that they're going after conspiracy statutes. That means public relations, operatives, lawyers, everyone who served as a paywall or like a computer firewall or a shield. Okay, so if you go ahead and tell someone, and then that person tells somebody, and then that person tells somebody, and then that person tells somebody to do something deceitful or illegal, if you have tried to shield yourself by removing yourself from the actual illegal act using 5 or 6 or 7 people or organizations, that don't matter if you have the Durham probe, because any degree of separation is completely irrelevant now. All of it leads to Madam Secretary, the DNC, and everyone involved. All the bureaucracy they used to go after Trump will also be used to find illegal activity that was almost certainly committed.
For information in the dossier.
He provided some information that was included in the
Ritz-Carlton stuff, the Manafort stuff. In the Crossfire Hurricane investigation and the Mueller investigation, when the FBI interviewed Mr. Dolan, what did he have to say?
To my knowledge, they didn't interview Mr. Dolan.
They didn't interview this guy? Source for the dossier? Key information in the dossier? Buddies with the Clintons? They didn't talk to him?
No. I mean, we report on that because even Christopher Steele in October 2016 identified Dolan as somebody that might have information.
I find it interesting they didn't talk to him. Were there agents on the case who wanted to talk to Mr. Dolan, Mr. Durham?
Yes.
What happened to analyst number 1? She kept pushing to talk to Mr. Dolan. She was ultimately turned down. What happened to her the day that she was turned down and said, no, we're not talking to Dolan? What happened to her?
At about the same time, she was assigned to a different project.
They moved her. They said, we can't have this. We can't have that. We can't be looking into the Clintons' buddy, a key source for the dossier. They reassigned her. And then what did she do?
She memorialized it.
She entered a memo to the file because she said, at some point the inspector general is going to want to know this information. I'm going to make sure it's recorded contemporaneously. She put it in the file. It's crazy. They didn't talk to
Gee, you think that file? You think that memorialized memo that James Comey loves so much, the memorialized memos that started the Mueller probe, you think that memo might be used to convict or prosecute or charge everyone involved in setting up Trump? Gee, maybe.
To the key source, they kept key intelligence from the investigators. This is how bad this investigation was. But here's the scary part. I don't think anything has changed. The day your report came out, 5 weeks ago, May 15th, you got a letter, Mr. Durham, addressed to you from the general counsel at the FBI, Mr. Jason Jones, writes you this 6-page letter, and he says, not to worry, everything is fine. It's all been worked out at the FBI. He even says on page 2, he says, had the reforms implemented by current FBI leadership, summarized below, been in place in 2016, failures detailed in your report never would have happened, and he underlines it. Said this would never happen because of the reforms we implemented in 2019 and 2020. And then he says on page 4, one of the specific reforms, he says, FBI executive management has instructed investigations should be run out of the field and not from the headquarters. That statement is not true. 5 weeks ago, the FBI wrote you and said everything has changed when in fact it hasn't, and a statement in there is absolutely false, and we know it's false because 2 weeks ago today, we interviewed Stephen D'Antuono, former head of the Washington field office, Mr. Durham, and here's what he said in his transcript. Head of the Washington field office, when the Trump classified document investigation began, he said, that case was handled differently than I would have expected it to be than any other cases handled. We learned a lot of stuff from Crossfire Hurricane that headquarters should not work the investigation. It's supposed to be the field offices. My concern is that the Department of Justice was not following these principles. Nothing is, and that's the thing that scares me the most. Nothing has changed. Mr. Durham.
And that's part of the conspiracy statutes. When they did everything possible to circumvent norms, traditions, protocol, bureaucratic norms, they did so for a purpose. Had they simply followed with the Inspector General report that Comey cites all the time, literally states that Comey and the FBI and everyone involved, Brennan, circumvented normal procedures, normal protocol. Why did they do that to the 700 people in the live chat? Why did they circumvent normal protocol? By the way, Kameshwari Kate, thank you to my super chat. Thank you so very, very much. Why, to the 800 or 1,000 people watching, why did they circumvent normal bureaucratic procedures, protocol, norms, traditions, the things that the wonderful, morally superior love so much? Norms and traditions. Norms and traditions. They completely eviscerated norms and traditions. Why? Answer in the live chat. You think maybe it was nefarious in intent?
Durham, I'm just finished with this. 60% of Americans now believe there's a double standard at the Justice Department. You know why they believe that? Because there is. That has got to change. And I don't think more training, more rules is going to do it. I think we have to fundamentally change the FISA.
So, all of these memos, because there were good patriots, and John Durham deserves the Presidential Medal of Freedom. This man deserves the Presidential Medal of Freedom. This is a patriot. He is very courageous, went after organized crime in the Northeast, put his life at risk, likely numerous times, and his work, he compiled all, and I was telling people this, but nobody cares generally what I say about anything, but I was telling people like 5 years ago, I said, look, the Durham probe is going to be used for future indictments. And that's what took place. Kameshwari Kate, thank you. My super chat, thank you. This man deserves the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Check this out.
Yeah. Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Durham, October 3rd, 2016, the FBI offered Christopher Steele $1 million to provide corroborating evidence of the allegations in his reporting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was that paid to him?
I'm sorry, was that what?
Was that paid to him?
That money was never paid out. There was no corroborating information.
Mr. Steele relied solely on a single unnamed subsource, correct?
He said that he had a primary subsource who had a network of subsources.
On October 18, 2016, the FBI submits the application for FISA surveillance relying heavily on the Steele dossier. No corroboration, correct?
And no corroboration for the substantive claims in that.
But they knew Steele was a signed-up paid informant. Could have asked for sources, never did, said he was reliable, no record of reliability, correct?
Mr. Steele had provided information in other areas, not in this area, in prior occasions.
FISA application relied, according to your report, at least in part on the Clinton plan intelligence, correct?
I'm sorry,
And the FISA application relied, according to your report, at least in part on the Clinton plan intelligence, correct?
Yes.
And they knew Steele had been hired by Fusion GPS, and Fusion had been hired by a law firm on behalf of senior Democrats, and that HC was aware, correct?
By the way, if anyone let's say there's like an imbecile out there, perhaps, that says, oh, it's already been litigated. No, it hasn't, because the trials where people were either acquitted or, years back pertaining to Durham probe cases did not have declassified data, and they weren't part of conspiracy statutes. So it's a completely new ballgame. You didn't have Kash Patel, John Ratcliffe. You have John Ratcliffe at Central Intelligence, Kash Patel at the FBI, Pam Bondi at the DOJ. So all of the Durham probe, the Clinton annex, all of that information, that's why I say John Durham deserves the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Because what he did was very important for the future of the country. Okay, it's a completely new ballgame. None of this was litigated. Literally none of this was litigated because it involves 18 U.S. Code 371 and other statutes like that one right there.
Correct.
At various points in time, those things became known to the FBI, yes.
And in December 2016, the FBI determined that Igor Danchenko, a Russian national, is previously subject to FBI investigation to be Steele's subsource, correct?
Yes.
They do not talk to Danchenko before the next FISA application, correct?
Correct.
January 12, 2017, the FBI goes back to renew the application for FISA surveillance, correct?
Yes.
Coincidentally, 1 week before Trump is inaugurated, correct?
Correct.
They then, after 2 trips to FISA, finally talked to Danchenko, basically determined it's all crap because they'd been relying on a Democrat operative, Dolan, correct?
Well, part of that is true. They clearly had relied on the information in the Steele dossier. There was a portion of one report from Steele that was definitely tied to Mr. Dolan.
Then in March of 2017, Jim Comey testified here on Capitol Hill that the FBI, under its counterintel authorities, has investigated Trump for collusion with Russia and people might get indicted, correct?
Correct.
Is it normal for the FBI director to talk about FISA-related investigations publicly? As a general matter?
I would say a general matter, I would say no.
Right. And again, knowing full well the uncorroborated allegations and knowing full well the genesis of said investigation was tied to Hillary Clinton's campaign, which the FBI director would have known.
People in the FBI knew that.
Correct. April 2017, they go back to FISA. They report they've interviewed principal.
People in the FBI knew that. What is it that John Durham is talking about? What is it that he just said? People in the FBI knew what?
Source, that the source is credible, but they leave out the entire fact that it's only credible and making clear that they relied upon before was total garbage. They continued through the summer of 2017, correct?
That's correct.
Under federal law and FISA rules, once they know there is an error or some material fact is incorrect in previous applications, you're supposed to correct that, right?
That's correct.
Was that done here? Yes or no?
Not at the time.
Was Deputy Director McCabe in charge of this investigation?
Deputy Director McCabe had direct involvement in the investigation.
Was Deputy Assistant Director Peter Strzok heavily involved with the investigation? And was FBI Director Comey briefed on the investigation?
The evidence that we came upon was, yeah, they were definitely, this is driven by the 7th floor.
Each FISA application is a verified application, and there's a Woods file with every factual assertion kept in a file, correct?
Correct.
Is it reasonable to believe that senior FBI leadership, and indeed senior leadership at the DOJ, did not know all these failures to ensure truthful facts were used for each FISA application, an application directly focused on an American presidential campaign? Is it reasonable to believe that the senior FBI leadership, and indeed senior leadership at DOJ, did not know these failures?
That I would distinguish between what the FBI knew and what the Department of Justice knew.
So FBI leadership knew it?
The FBI, people in the FBI knew this information. Not everybody knew everything, but they had all of this information.
So 2 final questions. In the fall of 2021, our colleague, Mr. Schiff, said in an interview, but at the beginning of the Russia investigation, I said that any allegations should be investigated. We couldn't have known, for example, people were lying to Christopher Steele. Is it remotely conceivable that the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee and the lead prosecutor of the impeachment of President Trump was uninformed that this investigation was kicked off based on a Clinton campaign Democrat-funded report with a witness, Mr. Steele, claiming facts that were uncorroborated and that ultimately came from a subsource, a Democrat operative, Mr. Dolan? Is that conceivable? And is in fact there evidence out of the...
It is inconceivable that John Durham just said, it is not conceivable that they didn't know it emanated from Clinton and the DNC. Everyone knew. And we all knew this, even if you watch my channel, read my writing in The Federalist, The Hill. I was a columnist at The Hill. Or I was a contributor at The Hill. The Huffington Post back in the day. Even Salon. We all knew they set up and framed Trump. Everyone knew this. Even the journalists that are defending Comey to this day knew. There are journalists that were a part of the Steele dossier controversy. It was published in BuzzFeed. And there were journalists at left-leaning publications that were a part of spreading the lie. They literally, imagine if Giuliani and Trump purchased a dossier that said Bill Clinton and President Obama and Hillary Clinton were in a Moscow hotel room enjoying a type of activity. That would never be allowed to be published at BuzzFeed or anywhere else. But because it's Trump, It was published everywhere, including BuzzFeed.
House Intelligence Committee that directly contradicts that, and that he did know, in fact.
I wouldn't know what Mr. Schiff would know, but at the time.
Finally, a final question. For the average American watching this, besides being fired, have Jim Comey, Andrew McCabe, or Peter Strzok been held accountable for these glaring violations? Have they been hauled before a grand jury or charged in any way? And if not, why not?
So they have not been, well, I'm not going to talk about matters that occurred before the grand jury because I can't. But with respect to have any of those individuals been charged, the answer is no.
Not until 2025 where James Comey was indicted, lying and obstruction of justice. But you see, this is going to be the template for the Clinton indictment. Just 2 pages. It's just 2 pages of very broad, ambiguous. We don't even know what is the on or about September 30th, 2020, the Eastern District of Virginia, defendant James B. Comey Jr. did willfully and knowingly make a materially false, fictitious, and fraudulent statement in a manner with the jurisdiction of the legislative branch of the government of the United States by falsely stating to a U.S. Senator during Senate Judiciary Committee that he, James B. Comey Jr., had not, quote, authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports regarding an FBI investigation concerning Person 1. Well, what? They leaked all the time. What are they referring to? The Wall Street Journal article? We don't know. It's not stated. We have no clue exactly what they're referring to. There were numerous leaks, so much so that Attorney General Loretta Lynch at that time made it a point to state that there were too many leaks. And then, of course, James Comey accused Attorney General Loretta Lynch of telling him to call the Clinton email probe a matter, not a criminal investigation, which she then said Comey lied about. Attorney General Loretta Lynch has stated Comey lied, and Andrew McCabe stated Comey lied to the Durham probe and others. So, this is very sordid, and it's not difficult to sift through. All of these lies, the catch me if you can mentality that Democrats and Republicans too, but in the past, 10 years, primarily Democrats have had, well, you can't prove anything. You can't prove this. Well, you can't prove it. It's like, nah, you can prove pretty much everything. We have declassified documents, including the documents in the Clinton annex from the Durham probe. So the Durham probe plus Tulsi Gabbard's declassified documents, there's no defense. There's just no defense anymore because the bureaucracy is now being turned against people who utilized the bureaucracy for their own political gain.
Lady from Wyoming is recognized.
Mr. Durham, in reviewing your report, I sincerely wanted to understand the work that you did and decipher the various investigations that we have been discussing. The origins, the history, the backstory, the who's, the why's, the what's, the what ifs, and the how. I desperately wanted to figure out what happened to what was once our flagship law enforcement agencies, the FBI and the DOJ, to determine what went wrong and to evaluate how we can go forward from here. I have listened with great interest, hoping to find some answers to the burning questions of the day. And I have reached a few conclusions that I do not believe are subject to dispute or debate. Now, I truly appreciate your regard for the agency you have dedicated your career to. I am sure that as your investigation progressed, you must have been truly saddened by what you found. What you have exposed, however, is that we are dealing with something so corrupt and so rotten that no amount of face paint, deflection, or whitewashing can fix this. You have been asked lots of questions about predicates, protocols, the Steele dossier, the Australian connection, Mr. Papadopoulos, Mr. Carter, the FISA court, and Crossfire Hurricane, among others. Your responses have been enlightening, but let's get to the brass tacks. None of those people or documents or reports were relevant to the FBI when it identified Donald Trump as public enemy number 1. What do I mean? The accuracy and veracity of the Steele dossier was irrelevant to the FBI. The accuracy and veracity of the reports coming from the Australian embassy were irrelevant to the FBI. The fact that the Russian experts in the CIA, FBI, NSA, and other agencies had no evidence of any kind of relationship between Mr. Trump and Putin or Russia was irrelevant to the FBI. And the fact that there was no verifiable evidence, such as testimony, documents, videos, or recordings of Russian collusion, was irrelevant to the FBI. Nothing, and I repeat, nothing that the FBI did was designed to show that Donald J. Trump was a Russian asset. That wasn't the purpose of the entire charade. How do I know this is true? Because they told us so. The very people who cooked this up and the ones who ran this entire operation. Strzok, Lisa Page, Andrew McCabe, Kleinsmith, Steele, the DNC, Perkins Coie. It was never their purpose to prove Russian collusion, and in fact, from the very beginning, they knew that no such thing actually existed. They knew that the entire Russian collusion narrative was fabricated by the Clinton campaign to deflect attention from her mishandling of classified materials and destruction of official emails. But they didn't need to prove Russian collusion. They just had to keep the investigation alive. And so long as they had a complicit press, and so long as they had people in this very body who has been here, one of the gentlemen who has been here much of the day, who would go on TV every night and lie about the smoking gun, they could further their personal and political agendas.
And I believe she's talking about Congressman Schiff. Let's continue.
Oh no, the purpose of Crossfire Hurricane wasn't to prove Russian collusion, it was to destroy Donald J. Trump. And they told us that with the text messages that are set forth on page 49 and 51 of your report, 49 and 50 of your report. And then, if they failed at blocking Mr. Trump from being elected as president, well, they had a backup plan. They had their insurance policy, to use Strzok's terminology, which was to make it impossible for him to govern. To use whatever tools were available to taint his presidency, the legitimacy of his election, his ability to work with foreign leaders, and to make everything about Russia, Russia, Russia. And how has this corruption and rot manifested itself in our everyday lives, in our national culture, in our ability to solve the problems we are facing? It has destroyed some of the key foundations of this country. A foundation built on equal protection, on the belief that justice is blind, on the belief that you will be held accountable if you commit a fraud of the magnitude of what we have been discussing here today, on the belief that due process, justice, and constitutional rights are more than mere words. It has left a smoldering, hot, volcanic mess where the soul of this country used to be. All because a few people in the FBI decided they wanted to destroy a political candidate and ultimately a president and anyone associated with him. While these folks set out to destroy a presidential candidate and later a presidency, the fact is that they destroyed so much more, and that will be their ultimate legacy. One casualty is America's faith in our institution, and another casualty is the erosion of a justice system that is supposed to apply equally to all Americans, but that has been weaponized to protect the favored few elites, the Clintons, the Bidens, while targeting political enemies. That is the current legacy of the FBI and DOJ. Mr. Durham, here's my question. How long do you think that this country will survive?
Mr. Chairman, the time has expired. You can't ask a question.
A two-tier justice system that seeks to persecute.
Jerry Nadler's like, Mr. Chairman, time has expired. No more.
People based on their political beliefs.
Witness may respond. Generally, his time has expired.
I don't. Do I respond?
Sure.
I don't think that things can go too much further with the view that law enforcement, particularly the FBI, the Department of Justice, runs a two-tiered system of justice. The nation can't stand under those circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Gentlelady yields back. This concludes today's hearing.
Mr. Durham, I've got a number of things I want to add.
This is quite interesting. Hit subscribe if you're new to my super chat. Thank you. After this live stream, go to H.A. Goodman's other channel. The link will be in the description of this. I have to put it up in the description, but it's also on the homepage of the YouTube channel. H.A. Goodman's other channel. I will be doing an upload there to summarize everything here. I'm going to build that channel. It's at 20,000 subs, but around 20,000. But we'll get it to 100,000 soon, hopefully. And hit subscribe. Check this out. This is the basis also for the upcoming indictments of Madam Secretary and others. This, like I said, is part of the conspiracy statutes that they're going to level against Comey, McCabe, Brennan, This is where part of the conspiracy almost certainly started. Right here. Hit subscribe if you're new.
I ask you, but do you desire to address what was being raised just now in fairness?
Yeah, apparently Mr. Schiff's questions are from an unsourced New York Times article written by Charlie Savage. I don't believe that there's anything in that article that is attributed to Ms. Danahy. And my recollection, I could be mistaken, but my recollection is that Ms. Danahy did not comment, wasn't quoted in any way in that article. So to the extent that the New York Times wrote an article suggesting certain things, it is what it is.
All right. Was Danchenko's status as a paid informant, a confidential human source, concealed from you for any period of time?
I'm not sure that was concealed. We found that out. We were once.
When did you learn about it?
When we started the investigation and how long it took for the FBI to identify this principal subsource and why the principal subsource wasn't identified earlier, that's when we came across Danchenko. We then asked the Bureau for, we found out he was a confidential human source. We asked the Bureau for his informant file, and that's when we gleaned that information.
Okay, so it was from his informant file once you got that from the FBI. Was there any delay in furnishing that to you?
Not that I recall, no.
Do you have any recollection? You were investigating, you said, from May 2019. He was a CHS until October 2020.
Yes.
You know when in that period of time, roughly, you learned that he was a CHS?
Probably halfway through there, but I'm not certain.
Okay. Why didn't you interview him while he was a paid source for the FBI?
Let me see. So with respect to Mr. Danchenko, he was interviewed by the Bureau in January 2017. We had brought to the attention of the new administration and the FBI, Mr. Danchenko's circumstances, including the prior espionage case that they never resolved or addressed.
Right. I understand all those details. I'm asking why you didn't interview him.
So when we were dealing with that section, Mr. Danchenko was represented by counsel. Mr. Danchenko, as you may know, in the normal course, you have to advise people whether they're subjects or targets of investigations, and we did not arrive at a point where we could interview Mr. Danchenko.
The FBI made Danchenko a CHS on March 7, 2017, after the factual predicate for Crossfire Hurricane in the Steele dossier had collapsed in January 2017 in his interview because he could not corroborate the dossier, and he revealed to the FBI that he was not a Russian-based source, nor did he have a high-level network of sources. The next day, March 8, the FBI finalized talking points drafted by Lisa Page on direction of Andrew McCabe for use in briefing the Gang of Eight in Congress.
Now here's where the possible conspiracy statutes could be leveled against everyone from McCabe to Clinton to Brennan. This is the information that will be used to indict almost certainly Hillary Clinton and others, right? From here on out. Almost certainly, potentially, like the Honorable James Comey says, potentially, possibly, potentially.
And Congress was briefed prior to Director Comey's testimony on March 20. Now, Attorney General Barr told the nation in December 2019 that you were examining the continuation of the investigation beyond the January collapse of the supposed factual basis and looking at irregularities, misstatements, and omissions. Yet your report makes no mention of the March 8 talking points prepared for Congress. Why?
Aware that there were talking points because it just wasn't part of the crux, the central portion of what we were reporting on.
I want the clerk to put up on the screen what is my submittal mark number 7 while I'm asking you this question. These talking points emerged into public as a defense exhibit in the Sussman case. They contained lurid allegations about Manafort operating high-level contacts with the Kremlin through Carter Page, that Steele had a primary subsource who was Russian-based, and that the primary subsource had a network of high-level Republican subsources. Same garbage that Danchenko had debunked in his January interview, these talking points were circulated among senior FBI leaders and Department of Justice leaders, more than a dozen passed on them. Did you interview them all about how this could occur or consider this material as the basis of prosecutable offenses?
We identified and interviewed many people in the FBI. I guess I would have to know who this particular email was circulated to be able to tell you whether we interviewed each of those persons or not.
Last point, I guess, because I'm about out of time. You identify the failure of the FBI to interview Dolan as sort of inexplicable. Totally agree. But as I go through your report and look, there are people who declined to be interviewed, not only Dolan, Danchenko, McComey, McCabe, Priestap, Struck, Page, Glenn Simpson, among others. It seems inexplicable to me that you didn't compel their testimony. Can you explain that?
Sure. First, let me make it clear that it is as disappointing, perhaps more disappointing to me and my colleagues that these people would not agree to be interviewed. Some of them had a lot to say publicly, but they refused to be interviewed by our folks. Let me explain. I'm not going to speak to any particular person because I don't want to violate any rules.
But guess what? They emailed everyone who was interviewed. They text message, or they likely, almost certainly emailed or text messaged or spoke to or wrote memos to or had conversations or interactions with people who were interviewed. So that's fine also.
But let me give you the general kinds of considerations that go into these things. First of all, the only way in which you can compel, as it were, a person's testimony would be to get a court order after somebody has asserted the Fifth Amendment privilege. So one factor, and there are multiple factors I'll go through here, but one factor is that a grand jury subpoena doesn't give a federal prosecutor the authority to simply force people to talk about things that the prosecutor, or in this instance, the investigative reviewers, might be interested in. In order to properly use a grand jury subpoena, you need to have an active grand jury investigation that's ongoing and a reasonable belief to believe that the person that you want to have come in has relevant information about that information. Otherwise, you run up against claims of grand jury abuse or claims of, trying to set a perjury trap or other bad faith reasons. So you can't just subpoena people to make them talk. You can subpoena people when you believe that they have relevant information. So that's a factor. We also take into consideration if a person has previously refused to cooperate, they won't cooperate with you on matters, even matters that they've previously talked about. And on prior occasions, those people have repeatedly said, I don't recall, I don't remember, and so forth and so on. You have to make this sort of prudential judgment. Well, okay, if you were to subpoena a person because you can make an argument that they have information that might be relevant to the investigation, is it going to be worth the effort to have them come in and then repeatedly say, I don't recall, I don't recall? You look at the most sensitive piece of information that you all saw in the classified information, right? That source.
Thank you for being.
So that interaction was not the one that I was thinking of that might be the basis for the indictments. This is probably more in line with what the conspiracy statutes. This is very interesting also. Troy Nels is awesome. Check this out, Congressman in Texas. Check this out. This is very, very interesting.
Being here today, and thank you for your tireless work on this, as you called it, a very sobering report. The American people were forced to endure years of the Trump-Russia probe, and for what? I'll tell you why. It's because my Democrat colleagues across the aisle, the Clintons, the dishonest mainstream media, and the rest of the deep state have been terrified of Donald Trump from the beginning. And their hatred and fear remains today. From the 34-count felony indictment from the radical DA in Manhattan to the most recent 37-count felony indictment in Mar-a-Lago, they just won't stop. They won't stop. Mr. Durham, I want to walk through a few things for the American people in this 300-page report on Crossfire Hurricane. For those that are watching who don't know, this was the code name for the investigation undertaken by the FBI into whether the Trump campaign was coordinating with Russia to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. Mr. Durham, it says on page 9, at the direction of FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe and FBI Deputy Assistant Director for Counterintelligence Peter Strzok, Crossfire Hurricane was opened immediately. Is that correct?
That's correct.
First, let's talk about who these two characters were. On page 9 of your report, it says Strzok and Deputy Director McCabe's special assistant had pronounced hostile feelings toward Trump in text messages before and after the opening of Crossfire Hurricane. The two had referred to him as loathsome, an idiot, Donald Trump, an idiot, someone who should lose to Clinton 100 million to 0, and Strzok once wrote, "Will stop," meaning Trump, "from becoming president." So here we have these two leaders in the FBI, Strzok clearly expressing his hatred towards Trump from the beginning, opening an investigation 6 months before the 2016 election. And where are these two guys now? McCabe, he's been a contributor at CNN, the Clinton News Network, since 2019, and Strzok is an expert on the Mar-a-Lago raid. Strzok is an expert on the Mar-a-Lago raid, both continuing to dispel lies to the American people. On page 10 in your report, within days after opening Crossfire Hurricane, the FBI opened full investigations on members of the Trump campaign team. The FBI then began working on requests of the use of FISA authorities against Carter Page. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Folks, let me highlight who this American hero is. Carter Page was painted as an alleged Russian agent. Carter Page served his nation honorably. He was a Naval Academy graduate, and the FBI spied on Carter Page through the use of FISA authority. Sir, do you believe that this FISA warrant against Carter Page was flawed?
Yes.
Mr. Durham, Section 702 of FISA expires this year, and I'm sure you're familiar with FISA and Section 702. Just for the people listening at home, FISA stands for the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which was created in 1978. In 2008, FISA 702 was added. Section 702 was created for us to have the authority to spy on non-U.S. citizens, Mr. Durham, we all know that Carter Page is an American citizen who served his nation honorably, and yet the FBI conducted surveillance, including wiretaps, based on falsified information provided by agents in the FBI. Mr. Page was an honest American, innocent man. Mr. Durham, the FBI obviously abused its FISA authority. They went after Carter Page, and it is my intent, and I hope the intent of my colleagues, that we do not reauthorize Section 702 because the FBI cannot be trusted. Finally, I want to talk about Charles Dolan and Mr. Danchenko, who was the main source of the Steele dossier. Dolan had played multiple roles in the Democrat National Committee, Democrat Party. He worked on both Clinton campaigns, Bill and Hillary. He was working with them, friends. On page 15 of your report, it says that in the summer and fall of 2016, Dolan and Danchenko traveled to Moscow in connection with a business conference. The business conference was held at the Ritz-Carlton in Moscow, which, according to the Steele reports, was allegedly the site of salacious sexual conduct on the part of Trump. Parents, if you're watching, earmuffs for your kids now, folks. Put earmuffs for your children. Mr. Durham.
So watch what the congressman does here. It's very amusing. Check this out.
Was this salacious sexual conduct? What is that?
The allegation was that...
Okay, don't answer it. I will.
Okay.
Think about this, America. In the game of politics, it gets dirty and nasty. And the people will say anything to beat their opponent. But this is the government doing it. Even the director of the FBI, Comey, said, it's possible Trump was with hookers peeing on each other. Christopher Steele said in...
So James Comey is now 10 years after that statement indicted for lying under oath. But anyway, let's continue.
Infamous Trump P-tape probably exists. Alleged P-tape incident was the only sex Trump party in Russia. You want to irritate the suburban mom at home? 5 months before an election, tell them the Republican leading candidate is peeing on prostitutes. We are aware of the member of this committee having an alleged affair with a Chinese spy, I refer to as Yum Yum. But this is a new low for anyone And I would hope Mr. Swalwell would agree.
So he mentions a Democratic congressperson. And the possible salacious romantic relationship with a potential spy. Possibly, potentially. It's been accused. There's a congressman, Democrat, that has been accused of having a romantic relationship with an agent, an espionage or a spy of another country, adversarial country. And he says, hey, if you're going to accuse Trump without any semblance of evidence, you do have possibly have some evidence that a Democratic congressman potentially had a romantic relationship with what was possibly an operative of another country. A spy, potentially, of another country. Possibly. Like the Honorable James Comey says, potentially, possibly.
Agree with me. Imagine if somebody would have said and taken it a step further, Mr. Swalwell was peeing on Yum Yum.
Time of the gentleman.
It's unacceptable. This has got to stop. The FBI needs to...
Time of the gentleman has expired.
I yield back.
The gentleman...
Mr. Chairman, I ask that the last comments be stricken. With respect to Mr. Swalwell.
My point is this: if you're going to say the President of the United States was in Russia peeing on prostitutes or vice versa, I'm just saying, could you imagine how that would affect any member of this committee? It would affect you. You're going to pick up a primary opponent, I'll guarantee that.
I mean, that's like the autobiography of like Bill Clinton or whatever, of most Democrats likely in Congress. But anyway, let's continue. The point is, if you're going to accuse Trump, you can also accuse other Democrats who, by the way, have direct links to possibly have direct links to foreign operatives and spies, possibly have romantic relationships. Why do you think a beautiful, attractive woman would want to get to know a congressman in the Democratic Party? Let's say a beautiful, attractive woman from another country and, want to work on this congressman's campaign because the congressman is so good looking and such a charming individual? Probably not. Maybe it's what they call a honey trap. Well, possibly. Who knows?
I recognize the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Biggs.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Durham, isn't it true that Danchenko admitted that information he provided to Christopher Steele in June of 2016 was, quote, rumor and speculation?
Correct.
And Danchenko himself estimated that he was responsible for 80% of the intelligence and 50% of the analysis in the Steele dossier. Is that right?
That's correct.
Do you agree with his assessment or his estimate of his participation in the dossier?
Yeah, we have no reason to doubt that. I mean, Steele identified him as the primary subsource or the principal source of the information.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Steele used that rumor and speculation to build his dossier. And we've wandered all over this. There's none of those statements were corroborated at all. And yet, Danchenko's reputation for veracity was considered bad. He was considered a boastful man who had low credibility, right?
There was information that the Bureau had along those lines, yes, sir.
Yeah. And in fact, when he lost his visa, his work permit, he used a Russian business as a front to basically fraudulently get a visa to work in the United States. Is that right? Page 128 of your report.
Yeah, he went to work for a company in the United States, and Steele was paying him through a cutout through that company in the United States.
Yeah, most of us who look at that area of the law regularly, like I do, would say that's immigration fraud. So, and it's also true, we talked about this, it's true, there was an FBI counter-espionage investigation into Danchenko 2009 to 2011, and that was a result of him approaching a Brookings Institution co-worker trying to essentially solicit espionage on behalf of the Russian government. And then even though the Washington field office is right there and he lived just a few miles from the Washington field office, the case was closed on Mr. Danchenko, that investigation, right?
The Danchenko investigation is being done by Baltimore, the Baltimore field office, but that's right, he stayed where he
nonetheless, he lived around, I live out there. I know, I live around the corner from there. So let's take a look at, let's boil this down. After determining that nothing that Danchenko told Steele could be verified, it was all a pack of lies and innuendo and rumor. After further determining that he had attempted to solicit espionage for Russia, and he had himself been subject of an investigation by the Bureau, and after having committed immigration fraud, the FBI hired him on as an informer and paid him $220,000 and proposed an additional $300,000 to be paid to him. Now that's your testimony, that's in the report, it's all there. And that's even after the Validation Management Unit had determined that Danchenko was a concern and likely had connections to Russian intelligence. That's in your report as well.
Correct.
And very Special Agent Helson knew most of these facts, but continued to endorse Danchenko's recruitment and payment as a confidential human source, right?
That's correct.
So I'm going to give you these things, and I think you understand why so many of us are underwhelmed with some of your recommendations about FBI, but overwhelmed by what's gone on here. The FISA application, we've talked about that, where that came from. We talked about that the FBI has conducted millions of unconstitutional backdoor at FISA 702 searches. Disparate treatment of Hillary Rodham Clinton, which you discuss in your report. The sweetheart Hunter Biden plea deal that would send normal Americans to jail for years. He's getting nothing. We have 50 intelligence officers signing onto a letter stating they would rather have a job in the Biden administration than tell the truth to the American people. The Hunter Biden laptop suppression. The DOJ targeting parents at school board meetings. A federal prosecutor setting a quota, essentially, on additional January 6th individuals. He said he's got to get 2,000 more. That's a quota. That's a bounty. DHS targeting Catholics at church. Hoaxes villainizing border agents while the border itself is under attack. That's all from this agencies. And I understand that you're loyal to your institution. I get that. But Ms. Sparks gave an excellent enumeration of all the things that you found in your report. And that's why people like me, and I don't want to speak for anybody else on here, we're baffled, just utterly baffled that more people have not been held accountable.
Well, fast forward, James Comey's indictment. You saw it in the beginning of this live stream. This, I think, is what I was looking for regarding the basis. So you have Durham, but Congressman Donald's here.
From Florida.
Congressman Donald's is absolutely brilliant in utilizing the Durham probe evidence as the basis for the indictments of Clinton and others upcoming, almost certainly, because of in large part because of the funding of the dossier. Check this out, okay?
Mr. Donalds is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman Gensler, welcome back. Hey, do you remember where we left off, you and I?
I do. You're a very good questioner, sir.
All right, well, let me refresh. Let's bring some things up. Where we left off was, did you facilitate the payment for the Steele dossier for the Hillary Clinton campaign back in 2016? Because you were the CFO. You acknowledged that. You also said, in response to my question, that this payment was not something that I was aware of, quote unquote. Those are your words. Interesting things have occurred since then. John Podesta actually testified to a committee of Congress, and John Podesta testified to a question about, was Gary, meaning you, was he day-to-day, hands-on, signing every check? And so John Podesta testifies, actually he was under a deposition with a committee here in Congress. He says, yes, I don't know if he signed the checks, but he was there every day, meaning you. So let's circle back. Were you aware of the fact that the Hillary Clinton campaign actually paid for the Steele dossier, which unleashed one of the worst issues of intelligence malfeasance that our nation has ever seen?
No, sir, I answered this 6 months ago, and this is the same answer today. No.
You weren't aware of what was going on. Mr. Gensler, I find that very interesting because, if I listen to some of the people and the staff that have left the SEC, you're very aware of everything that is going on. It's actually your MO. You're very hands-on. So you're going to tell the committee right now, you had no idea that the Hillary Clinton campaign, of which you were the CFO on, sent money to Perkins Coie for a dossier that was phony, that led to the spying of a presidential campaign in 2016. You were not aware of any of this.
Look, sir, as a chief financial officer in a political campaign, I was not aware of what a law firm was doing with some of the monies that they got.
Now, I find that interesting because in some of your other rhetoric about CFOs in the public sector, the private sector of our economy, you are very tough on CFOs. You've said on the record on many occasions that CFOs have a fiduciary responsibility to the organizations that they cover, that they should be aware of everything that is going on. So how is that a standard you hold CFOs in the private sector to, but you don't hold yourself to that same standard?
That's not a standard that the SEC holds CFOs to. It's about their financials and that the financials are put together in accordance with GAAP and that the numbers are accurate.
And yet, the DNC and the Clinton campaign they broke campaign finance law. They paid a campaign finance. The FEC made them pay a fine because they broke FEC statutes. So, the money, well, by the way, they cheated Bernie Sanders. The only one on the planet who still cares, even though I love Trump, and it's embarrassing for anyone who still supports Bernie Sanders that I used to support Bernie Sanders. The feeling is mutual. But Bernie was probably in on the whole charade, but he was cheated. His money was almost certainly funneled to purchase a Steele dossier. Campaign donations were used to purchase a dossier to create a hoax, a Red Scare McCarthy era hoax. But the money was campaign funding. The campaign funding was used to buy a dossier to deceive the entire country, but the campaign funding should never have been used to buy that dossier. That's why the FEC fined the DNC and the Clinton campaign, because they broke FEC laws.
And that they're
So did you accurately pay for the Steele dossier out of the Hillary Clinton campaign?
Sir, I learned about that way after President Trump was a president and Hillary Clinton was a private citizen.
All right, well, let's move on. We'll probably circle on that another time. I want to reference a story in Capital Account from June 13. Mr. Chairman, I ask for unanimous consent for the story be entered into the record.
Without objection.
The story notes that you met with Senator Tammy Baldwin in May about the SEC's proposal related to the 13D beneficial ownership disclosure, at which time you allegedly asked Senator Baldwin's staff, allegedly, to contact an organization called We the Investors to submit comment letters in favor of the 13D proposal. Subsequently, the SEC was flooded with 350 plus comment letters from so-called individuals, but mostly form letters stamped with the moniker We the Investors in favor of their proposal. It appears to me that you have engaged in astroturfing to advance your own agenda. Is this true? If this is true, is this a serious breach of impartiality that would violate the spirit, if not the letter of the law of the APA?
Sir, again, I don't know what the press is talking about. I remember a meeting with the senator. It was a good thought.
Did you meet with Senator Baldwin in May with respect to 13D?
I think that it's on my public calendar that I met with Senator Baldwin. I meet with senators and representatives.
Okay, so here's what we
regular
I need to
basis.
get from your public calendar if you actually met with Senator Baldwin. I think the committee would like to know that. In this meeting with Senator
think I
Baldwin's
did.
staff, did you speak to an organization called We the Investors?
I have no memory of that.
Mr. Gensler, the no memory routine from a lot of appointees is really getting old. You guys are discussing and leading some of the various regulations facing our economy. So to come before a committee of Congress and have no idea what you talked to with a senator's staff about 13D?
The meeting was with the senator, sir.
All right, well then, if you don't recall what you said to a United States senator about key issues facing our economy from a regulatory basis,
Please, sir.
that's a real problem, don't you
You're a
think?
good questioner, but please, sir, that story is not one that I would confirm. It's not a story that I believe is accurate.
Let me ask you a question. Broad base. Do you think it's appropriate for the chairman of the SEC, or frankly the head of any agency, to engage with outside groups to accomplish the agenda they want to see through rulemaking?
We are responsible under the Administrative Procedure Act to hear from outside parties, market participants, constituents in your district, members
No,
of
that's not my
Congress.
question. We want to hear from outside
obligated.
groups.
We're
Is it
obligated.
okay to foment outside groups to help you
Gentleman's
accomplish what you want to
time's
see?
So you can see from that exchange that Byron Donalds is getting at the heart of the matter. Congressman Donalds is brilliant here. The funding, which we now know from the Clinton annex and the Comey indictment, the funding is the key issue. Okay, this is really quickly.
But with an opportunity.
This is why, ladies and gentlemen, the statutes that I talked about have in this case, are not running on statute of limitations, okay? So check this out.
For indictments, potential prosecutions, accountability from those people who may have lied under oath, like John Brennan, James Comey, and perhaps Hillary Clinton.
Well, that's why I've made the referrals that I have. D&I Gabbard has made referrals.
Yeah.
And why we're going to continue to share the intelligence that would support the ability of our Department of Justice to make bring fair and just claims against those who have perpetrated this hoax against the American people and this stain on our country.
Director, one other question on this. Tulsi, as well as President Trump, used the word treason. Is there a statute of limitations on treason?
Well, Maria, what I would say is this, is there is no doubt in my mind that the people that we just talked about conspired. They conspired against President Trump. They conspired against the American people. And so I'll leave it to Pam Bondi and our Department of Justice, Kash Patel and our FBI to investigate the conspiracy to do what and what charges that they're capable of bringing. But again, I don't think statute of limitations are going to impact, because in a conspiracy, Maria, the statute of limitation doesn't start to run until the last act in furtherance of that conspiracy. And Maria, part of why this is so important is the people behind this are still furthering the conspiracy. They're refusing to admit or acknowledge what they did in 2016 and what they did in 2020 was wrong.
That's why Ratcliffe, okay, John Ratcliffe, the head of the CIA, the current central, we went from Brennan to Ratcliffe in 10 years, thank God. Okay, that's why the Comey indictment, which will serve as a template almost certainly for the Hillary Clinton and other indictments, is so broad, vague, ambiguous. Only 2 pages. It's only 2. Why do you think it's only 2 pages? We don't even know, and we don't know the exact leak or even the publication or what, we don't know what the false statement was. We don't even know if it's Ted Cruz. He made numerous false statements. This is what they call a placeholder indictment to pave the way for a superseding indictment, because they're indicting everybody. They're indicting everybody involved. Okay, I am interested in this not because I support President Trump. Because if President Trump tomorrow purchased a dossier that said a Democrat was working for another country and, J.D. Vance lost because a Democrat was working for another country, I wouldn't support that. It's completely absurd. I wouldn't support that because it would be so outlandish. If President Trump, okay, I love President Trump, but if he sent Americans to never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts and wars, I wouldn't support J.D. Vance. I wouldn't support President Trump. I'm not part of a cult like the wonderful morally superior Democrats who would vote for Liz Cheney if she was the nominee. Every single pundit on the left would support Liz Cheney if she were nominee. If she were the Democratic Party's nominee, they would. It doesn't matter how, the communist, socialist, whatever, Green Party, they would all say, vote for Liz Cheney because she's the Democratic nominee. That is a cult. That is cult-like behavior. I would not do so. But the basis of the indictments, ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now, is the Durham probe annex. The Comey indictment is like a template. It's very vague, broad, ambiguous because, like John Ratcliffe stated, you're going to have a whole bunch of indictments based on conspiracy statutes. I think he probably knows a little bit because he now has the entire CIA information, whatever, quote-unquote intelligence or whatever evidence there was, or evidence of a conspiracy. Hit subscribe to this channel. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right now. It's on the homepage of H.A. Goodman. God bless you all. Thank you so very much. I'll have a live stream later tonight on this channel. We'll do a number of uploads on H.A. Goodman's other channel. To my super chat, thank you. It's happening.